We got blue skies and moderate winter temperatures today. It's the last week of January 2025. I'm going to do a midwinter hike up to the highest peak in Connecticut, but not the highest point in Connecticut. We're in the town of Salisbury, which is northwest Connecticut, right near where Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York meet. And we'll be taking what's called the Undermountain Trail to several other trails that go up towards the summit of Bear Mountain. Bear Mountain is about 55-60 feet lower than the highest point in Connecticut, but it's the highest mountain with views, and it feels like a mountaintop. The actual highest point is a couple miles west of there. It's on the slope of another mountain that's actually, the peak is in Massachusetts. The highest point in Connecticut doesn't have a view. It's just a more of a geographic point. So I'm heading for the highest peak in Connecticut that does have views. At least it did the last time I was up there, which is back in the early 90s. But pretty certain there's still good views, especially in the wintertime. A lot of scrub vegetation up there, not a lot of really tall trees, unlike where we're starting today, which has some taller trees. So we're at about 700 feet elevation here. The summit's about 23 is what All Trail says. USGS says 2316. We'll just figure it's about a 1,600 foot climb. There's not a lot of redundancy in this climb. You're pretty much going up to get up there and down to get back down. And we can make like a lollipop loop on what's called the Paradise Lane Trail to use that to access Bear Mountain as well. So that's one option we have. As we go up the mountain, we can decide that the most direct route up the mountain is to take this Undermountain Trail to the Appalachian Trail, and it's a little less than 3 miles to the summit. If we do the lollipop loop, which I'm planning on doing, it would add a little distance. It would allow us to climb Bear Mountain from the north, crest over the summit, and then head down the south side back to this Undermountain Trail. I got the trail map printed off. We'll look at it as we go today. What a great day. There's not much wind. There's blue sky. And hopefully we'll get some good views of northwest Connecticut, eastern New York, and western Massachusetts. And it is 1.1 miles from the parking lot for the Undermountain Trail. That's on Connecticut State Route 41. Maybe 3 miles north of Salisbury, Connecticut. They don't plow it. We didn't have that much snow yet this winter, at least not a lot on the ground right now. So people had driven in there with no problem. I had no trouble in a front-wheel drive car. Because the snow had been packed down. It hadn't been rained on and refroze, so it wasn't icy. But if it had been, then it would have been hard to get traction in there. It's pretty flat. So in those conditions, it may be difficult to park there. If the snow is really deep, I don't know if you could park there. I don't know if they have a minimum flat threshold for plowing that parking lot, or if they just don't plow it ever. Part of Mount Riga State Park, which is basically state land that doesn't have any facilities except this trail. And the trail doesn't stay on state land the whole time. Okay, 1.1 miles to the Paradise Lane Trail. The shorter route continues on the Undermountain Trail to Bear Mountain. 0.9 miles further to the AT, Appalachian Trail, and then another 0.9 from there to the summit of Bear Mountain. I've got time to do Paradise Lane Trail, which is 2.1 miles, and from there it rejoins the Appalachian Trail right below the summit of Bear Mountain, but it's a steep uphill. It's recommended that you don't try to go down that in the winter, but only up it, so that's my plan. And there's also some viewpoints supposed to be on this Paradise Lane Trail. I've never actually done the Paradise Lane Trail when I was back here in the 90s. I don't think it existed then, at least not formally. So let's go see what's back there, and then we'll loop around. This is the lollipop part of this hike. I will get out the map and trace our course as the day goes on, and make note of where we have gone so far. We'll take one look at the map since we're at a stopping point here. I mentioned this made a lollipop shape. We started at Route 41, yellow line. There's a parking lot there. Again, it wasn't plowed, but I was able to park. 1.1 miles so far. We've come about 700-800 feet in elevation. Never steep, never that rocky, no hands required, moderate. I'd actually call it easy hiking by New England standards because it was never that steep. And this map I pasted together, taped together. I got the topographic information off of US Topo Maps. The best version I could find was in metric, so I converted some of the elevations to English. Got the distances off of all trails and put them on here as well. 1.1 so far up this hill. We're going to take the Paradise Lane Trail. It's a 0.3 miles to a campsite, I think. All trail said 1.2 to back to the Appalachian Trail. This sign here is saying something else. Whatever it is, I'll do it. I've got plenty of daylight. From where the Paradise Lane Trail intersects the Appalachian Trail, in my own shadow here, I have to just live with it. Whatever that distance might be, either 1.5 or 2.1 according to the green sign here, we're going to take it, and then it's a pretty short distance, a few tenths of a mile to the summit of Bear Mountain. That's considered quite steep. I remember doing it a long time ago. Easier to go up the steeps in the winter than down them, especially if there's any ice. I do have micro spikes on today. I put them on at the start. Haven't really needed them yet, but it's easy to hike in the snow with micro spikes. As long as you don't run into areas with no snow, it's no trouble at all. We'll go up to the summit of Bear Mountain. The south side on the Appalachian Trail is more gradual, and then we'll take the 0.6 miles is what this is saying. The distance is back to the Undermountain Trail. That's all trails. This sign says 0.9. The Appalachian Mountain Club has good maps of this area. I didn't have any, and I didn't really have time to order them online and get them in time. So I'm just doing the best I can with all trails and paper maps that I printed. Well, about 3/10 of a mile down the Paradise Lane Trail, there's a side trail that I just took. It comes down a few hundred feet in elevation to the Paradise Lane campsite, I think this is called. Paradise Lane Group Campsite, yes. So backpackers use this. And there's a view back here. So we're going to get the first view of the day, hopefully not the last. Started out a little hazy today. I think the wind shift might be clearing some of this out. Haze in the winter is usually caused by air that's been sitting a little while, kind of like an inversion, and there was one this morning. My car thermometer went from 33 to 16 and back up to 30, depending on where I was. in the hills and valleys of western Connecticut. So our viewpoint, I think, is right down here. Sure turned out to be a pretty morning. Doesn't feel that cold, but I think on the summit of Bear Mountain, I'm definitely going to have to layer up and put my wind shell back on, or put it on, because of this stiff southwest wind that's blowing today. And yes, the vista is marked on the map of the group campsite. There's a marking for where the vista is, and unofficial trails, no blazes, but plenty of signage as to where the vistas are. So this will be looking east, south, and northeast. The view to the west will have to wait till we get up on top of Bear Mountain, or at least near the top. There's Twin Lakes off in the distance. And there was another lake right at the bottom here. I forgot the name of it. Twin Lakes is what we're going to see a couple miles east of here. And I'll zoom in on Twin Lakes. So the one on the right is kind of shaped like a almost U-shaped, and then the one in the center, or the one to the left of that, is more round in shape. And plenty of good farmland in the Housatonic Valley here. There's a lot of marble in the lowlands around here, which makes for pretty good farmland. You can see there's a farm right there. And hazy view to the east towards Canaan Mountain, which is probably higher than where I'm standing right now. It's about 2,000 feet in elevation. There's some overlooks on that, and there's no real official trail network up there that's marked. I'm considering exploring it sometime. I didn't want to try to do it today, but I could consider that in the future. Certainly within day trip distance for me. May not get done this winter or this early spring. We're looking south towards Salisbury. All right, we'll get a little better look at Salisbury here. That was the bark of a chestnut oak there. I'm surprised finding that here on this open ledge. It's got extra thick bark, and those squares and polygons in the lower part of that tree are extra thick, so the bark can survive a fire. Scarlet oak has similar features. We might see some of that today as well. One lone white pine tree up here. I think we're going to see a lot of pitch pine up on Bear Mountain, but there isn't any right here. But lots of open ledges and a view of Salisbury area straight ahead. So I had to come just a short distance from that other overlook to get the best view looking south. And there it is. We'll continue on the Paradise Lane Trail. We'll go back up to it and continue north on it to the Appalachian Trail. I'll start recording again when I find something of interest and when we get to that junction. As we travel along the Paradise Lane Trail, it's pretty level, stays on contour. Trees with green bark, boy, there's a few. This striped maple can get green on the bark between the stripes. Sometimes it's gray, sometimes it's purple, sometimes it's green. And it's an understory tree. It can get pretty high, but usually it's like in the 10 to 30 foot range. It's beautiful red buds in the wintertime. Just as pretty, if not prettier, than the red bud you find on a red maple, which is common on this mountain. Gets huge leaves, bigger than your hand in the summer. It's called goosefoot maple. It has 3 large lobes and then a couple smaller ones off of it. Looks like a goose's foot or a goosefoot. And Real common in the Appalachian Mountains, even all the way down into the higher elevations down south along the Appalachian Trail. There we are right there. So trees with green bark. Sassafras grows on this mountain. I've already seen some. The younger branches on saplings or the upper branches on the older trees can be green. Box elder doesn't really grow around here, but where it does grow, the younger shoots are green as well. And just a few hundred yards up the trail from that striped maple, which is pretty much all along the trail, got some sassafras saplings with that green bark. You won't find a young sassafras tree under mature trees. It's got to have some sun for it to seed in. I think there's just enough break here that happened. Maybe 20 years ago. Maybe opened up because of gypsy moth damage, mortality from gypsy moths, or fires, or drought. All of the above. So here's our green branch of that sassafras tree, which has an interesting looking bark on the larger trees. It's pretty heavily furrowed. And the buds aren't red like we saw on that straight maple, just kind of a globe shape almost, and still green. And the leaves are unique. They're shaped like mittens. Some of the mittens have a thumb on one side, some have a thumb on the other side, and some have a thumb on both sides. Kind of like that. And some don't have any thumb. Just a blade-shaped leaf. So that's the only tree I can think of that has that feature. And one of the few that has green bark on the younger sprouts and on the lead branches of these younger trees. And we are finding pitch pine along this Paradise Lane trail, gnarled and twisted. Some of these could be really old. They go all different directions when Mother Nature beats them up and twists them and breaks them. Given a chance, they will grow straight, but often you find them in places like this where they don't because of the type of weather. So we got a little bit of a view of our goal for today, or our high point, and I don't know if I can get a clear view of it. I'm going to try though. And the summit of Bear Mountain has a lot of open ledge, so I think we can get a better look right up here of the view of the summit before we actually get there. And I think this is about as good of a view as I'm going to get on this stretch of trail. So you can see those open ledges. Kind of dome shaped almost. It's not real pointed. But the highest peak in Connecticut and the highest point is slightly higher, just to the west of here. Yeah, there's plenty of that sassafras now. This is all an area that's gotten plenty of sun over the years, and plenty of sassafras. These are all sassafras right here. And they hardly ever grow straight. They usually have deeply furrowed bark right there in the green new growth where you can see it. A little bit of serviceberry growing up here too. It has striped bark like that striped maple, but it doesn't have the green between the stripes. It gets beautiful flowers in April and early May. I got one right here, and there's a lot of it growing up here. Again, it needs sun just like the sassafras for it to take off and start growing and persist. You won't find it in deep shade of other trees. We got a close-up of the serviceberry bark right here. The stripes aren't quite as pronounced as that on the striped maple, and it's definitely not green between the stripes. It's usually gray. It can twist around like a barbershop pole on some of these trees, especially the older trees. But beautiful in early spring, mid-spring. I think at this elevation I'd be guessing late April. But it can bloom in early April if it's warm enough at the lower elevations. You go down further south from here. It's a short bloomer. It may only bloom for 3 or 4 days if it's a warm spell. Best way to catch serviceberry in bloom is for it to get warm and for it to start blooming, and then for the weather to cool off for a few days. Then it'll last a week or two. But during the warm spell, sometimes it's quick to flower and then lose its flowers. All right, Paradise Lane was level walking. I think the 2.1 miles on the sign we saw earlier is probably more accurate than when I got off of All Trails. We're going to trade the blue blazes for the familiar white blazes of the Appalachian Trail, which, as everybody probably knows, goes for over 2,000 miles from Springer Mountain, Georgia to Mount Katahdin, Maine. And yes, people hike it even in the wintertime. A lot of other people on YouTube record their hikes, which is amazing that they can do that and still get their miles in. You have to go off the trail to upload them at hostels and stuff. So anybody that can do that trail in 6 or 6.5 months and record the whole thing and upload the whole thing along the way has got my respect, because just hiking 15-20 miles a day and keeping warm, keeping cool, keeping hydrated, keeping fed is a full-time job. So we got a sign here showing the mileage. We've come 3.2 according to this sign. And I don't know if there's mileage to the top of Bear Mountain on any of these signs, but this is the Appalachian Trail. The Massachusetts border is very close to here. But we're going to turn left and head uphill on the Appalachian Trail with these white blazes. And we'll record the views and anything else we can find on this summit. Well, as we approach the summit of Bear Mountain, going southbound on the Appalachian Trail from the junction of the Paradise Lane Trail, well, the paradise is over, folks. I read that this was tricky in the winter, and it is. Some people I saw today weren't using microspikes. I think it would actually be easier to go down this if you didn't have microspikes, but to come up it, I needed them. There was places between these boulders where water had seeped out and froze. And I had to put my hiking stick away and use my hands to grab rock where I could. But it's doable. I'd say this is more on the difficult side, especially in winter conditions. In the summer, probably more moderate, just because it's not extremely steep. But this is what you get in areas where, you know, there isn't a lot of dirt to make a switchback. They just have to do what they can to get through these ledges. As you go north on the Appalachian Trail, this becomes the norm. From here, switchbacks are a luxury. From here up, they have them in places, but most places you're scrambling up ledges like this. We're starting to get a taste of the view. I think that haze I was talking about earlier has started to dissipate. Alrighty, well, the trees are definitely shorter as we approach the summit of Bear Mountain here. Not because of the elevation. This is only 2,300 feet. You can find full-size trees a couple thousand, at least 1,000 feet higher than this, depending on where you are. So this is more just because this is thin soil. It's probably burned a lot, and the wind can prune the trees so they grow sideways instead of up, like this pitch pine right here. All of these pitch pines go to about 15-20 feet, and then they start growing sideways. The wind probably either breaks or desiccates the branches any higher than that. Desiccate means basically dries it out, mostly in the winter time when the air is extremely dry. And a lot of oak up here as well. I think that a lot of this is There's bare oak up here, lots of it. Also some scarlet and northern red. We'll hold off on all the tree ID. We're on a windy summit here. We'll just leave that to where it's a little warmer. All right, well, USGS topo sheet says 2316. So that's what All Trails said, 2323. I think if you climb up this stone pile, that's what you would have. So here we are, the highest peak in Connecticut. And the stone pile is a little bit higher than that. Alrighty. There's some words here that are a little hard to read. It's been weathered away. About how high it is, I can't quite make that out. The view will be had from the top and maybe from some of the ledges off on the side of this mountain. And we're definitely going to get a view to the north and the east, maybe a little bit to the west from this stone pile here. Okay, yes, the haze has dissipated. Okay, looking north is Mount Everett. It's a dome shape. It's about 300 feet higher than where we're standing. The view is not on Mount Everett. The view is on Race Mountain, which is the smaller mountain before Mount Everett, but it has a great view. You can look straight down. That's Race Mountain right there, straight down at the Housatonic Valley. Having hiked that in the past. The Appalachian Trail goes over both those mountains. And we're getting a similar view as we had earlier, but we're higher up. We can still see Twin Lakes straight ahead. A lot less haze right now. And then the mountains of Litchfield County over towards Norfolk, Connecticut, and Great Barrington, Massachusetts. I don't know if we can see Monument Mountain from here. Don't think we can, but it would be over in this general area, maybe around the corner a little bit too much. This rock pile. Probably just got them from nearby, I'm sure. It's the same kind of rock we've been seeing the whole morning. And then just more of these miniature pine trees, the ones that just don't get that tall. Mostly pitch pine, a little bit of white pine in the mix up here. I'm going to do a little looking around up here. I'd like to see if I can get some views from ledges that aren't on the trail. It's not too hard to hike through this open woods here. It's a little scrubby, but we'll see what we can do. I'm going to study the satellite view and see if there's an open ledge that is near the trail that I could scramble over to and get some more views to the west. All right, well, the satellite view shows open ledges all around this mountain, and I found some obvious animal paths or even herd paths made by people hiking that get us a better view to the west. So we'll see what we can see here. We'll poke around these ledges for a few minutes. Here's Mount Everett, straight ahead there. Already seen that. And one of these peaks is actually where the highest point in Connecticut is. It might be Mount Frisell, might be this one right over here. Thought about doing that hike today, but I didn't know about the parking situation and the road that goes up there. It says no winter maintenance to where you can start, so I opted not to. Behind that, we can see the Catskill Mountains way back there. So we have definitely lost that haze. Probably 30, 40 miles west of here are the Catskill Mountains. A little scrambling required, a little ducking required, but boy, we got some great views back here. This is looking more southwest. So the Catskills were to our west. To our southwest, these are called the Taconic Mountains and Litchfield Hills. We're actually looking into New York here. The Appalachian Trail does continue down that way through Sharon, Connecticut, and Cornwall, Connecticut, and Kent, Connecticut, and eventually into New York State, down in the general area where we're looking. And let's see if I can make out the Shawangunk Mountains. That was the last video I did a couple months ago in November. Well, certainly clear enough to see that far. I have to get a compass out and an overall map to see if we're looking in the exact direction. But the mountain range to the south of the Catskills, southwest into New York State, is the Shawangunk Ridge, which is Mohonk Preserve, Minnewaska State Park, and points beyond. So that's the general direction we're looking. I'll see if I can figure that out when I get back and type in the names of these peaks if I can figure them out. So yes, the views are great. There's other peaks just west of here that have even better views looking west. I considered those today as well. But with the snow, I never know where I can park. I didn't want to waste an extra half-hour driving over to the other side of this mountain range and hiking up Brace Mountain and Olander Mountain and finding out the parking was unavailable or snowed in. So picked a closer parking lot and was able to park there. But I was told by some of the other hikers that they do not plow it. So you have to deal with whatever Mother Nature throws at you. And they said that most of the time people bust in there and pack it down with their cars and trucks. And, you know, if you can get in there, park there. And if not, you have to go somewhere else. So a great hike, a great view. And we had a great day. You know, it's been bitterly cold a lot in January. And today is not bitterly cold. We got a breeze, but it's not unbearable. And I'll enjoy the walk back down. We'll do a couple short clips on the way down and review the hike at the bottom. But this is definitely day hike distance. And with micro spikes and not too much snow in the woods right now, it's doable midwinter. Well, we're coming back down Bear Mountain after getting those views to the west. We actually can get them from the trail too. Not quite as good, but you can get them from the Appalachian Trail. You don't have to do what I did and find some herd paths going west. There are some views right along the trail here as you're going southbound from the summit of Bear Mountain. This is all short trees, some gray birch, a lot of bare oak, and other oaks that are in a scrub form, and lots of that service berry up here. This would be great when it's in bloom. I'm sure it is. We'll just gradually descend here. This side of the mountain is not as steep, it's not as technical, and supposedly doesn't have as much ice. Of course, that's always a possibility. So what I found today is may not be what you find. It just depends on the weather. The worst thing you can get is a lot of snow and then a lot of rain and then cold again. So we haven't had that. The snow we've had has been kind of fluffy, light, and it hasn't been warm enough to rain in almost a month. Just a little bit last weekend, and then it snowed on top of it, so that amount of rain didn't even really affect the trail conditions. Yeah, we're getting continuous views as we head south here on the Appalachian Trail. This is better than I remember it, but without leaves on the trees, views that you don't get in the summer are easy to get. So let's enjoy this view looking southwest, and we'll just keep on hiking. A lot of the trails in this area have great views. Not just the Appalachian Trail, but a lot of them. And we're back on the Blue Blazes. This first half mile of the Undermountain Trail is the part we didn't do on the way up. But those views continue down south on the Appalachian Trail from the summit of Bear Mountain almost to the point where we're back on the Undermountain Trail. So we'll keep on walking, and we'll do a look at the map one more time before we finish this hike. And if anything else of interest pops up, we'll take a look at it. Have a great day. We're back out of the wind. Sun's back out. It's a real pretty afternoon. Well, the sun doesn't set for almost another hour, but with a 2,300 foot mountain to our west, it has already set on the east side of Bear Mountain here. And you can hear the sound of the cars on Route 41 in the background there. So we're back to where we started. Took me about 7 hours. I'm going to assume the mileage on the trail signs was correct. Seems like it was. And that would add up to about 7.5 miles, what I did today. And a little bit off trail to go look at the view by the campsite, and a little bit off trail so you go look at the views on top of the mountain that I ended up getting from the trail. So doing about 1 mile an hour making videos. I can usually do 2 miles an hour on terrain like this, so I think this trail could be done in 5 hours, no problem, if you weren't making videos. I tend to take a lot of time to make videos and take photos. So that's what we're looking at here. I'll take a look at this map one more time, which I really didn't need. There was plenty of trail signs and plenty of blazes. But I always like to know what I'm getting into, and I can scale off where I am. I'm more comfortable having a map of where I'm going, even if it's not completely necessary. And parts of this hike I had never done before, including this Paradise Lane trail. So, I'm guessing 7.5 miles to do this loop based on the mileage on the signs. L Trail says it's less. I don't know who's right. It doesn't matter. It took me about 7 hours. And except for the north face of Bear Mountain, which would be a scramble even in the summer, the rest was moderate. Never really that difficult. So beautiful hike. Possible to do it in the winter if you can get parked there and the snow isn't too deep. I had no trouble in the 4 to 6 inches of snow that's on the ground today. That's all been packed down by other hikers. We'll continue these adventures as 2025 progresses. I'll try to get back in the woods in March and April.